Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephen Dwyer, and on behalf of everyone here at Savision today, it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar. Just before we get underway, if you have any questions at all about the content as we're going through the material, please feel free to enter it in the Q&A window, and we'll either get to it as we're going through the webinar itself or right after it concludes. Now, before we get to our speaker today, Thomas Maurer, I just want to throw in an obligatory commercial for Savision and its products. Savision, of course, is a company that's laser-focused on Microsoft System Center, and our products and solutions make System Center that much better and even more essential for you and your organizations. We transform the low-level IT data that Operations Manager puts together and monitors into high-level dashboards and solutions for monitoring business services. Our flagship product is called LiveMaps, and the next release, LiveMaps Unity, that we'll be previewing at TechEd next week, actually brings business service management to System Center Operations Manager. It lets IT personnel take their low-level components and build them up into services so that they can understand the language of business users, and at the same time it gives you high-level dashboards and drill-down capabilities so that you can expose the information from Operations Manager to business users, and they can immediately understand if their services are running or not. Our other product that we're coming out with another release, TechEd, is called Cloud Reporter, and it monitors your Hyper-V environment. It pulls that all information together. It lets you run reports to do predictive capacity planning, to do what-if scenario modeling. For example, if you know you're going to do a rollout of new virtual machines, you can plug that into Cloud Reporter as a scenario, and it will tell you next quarter and 4 or 5 quarters down the road where your capacity will be and when you need to purchase new hardware. At the same time, it also lets you identify unused resources so you can increase the density of virtual machines that you have running, and it also does right-sizing based on historical information, letting you reclaim memory from virtual machines that don't need it and give resources like CPU and memory to virtual machines that are starving. Putting LiveMaps and Cloud Reporter together, Savision really takes System Center and the System Center family of products like Operations Manager and Virtual Machine Manager to the next level. Rather than just looking at things from an IT point of view, lets you take a holistic overview that lets you share information with business users, and lets business and IT work together on the same page. With LiveMaps and Cloud Reporter, everyone in an organization can have a total picture of all the services and everything that's revenue generating in the company and be able to speak a common language. And now, without further ado, it's my pleasure to turn you over to Microsoft MVP, Thomas Maurer.
Thank you, Steve. As you said, my name is Thomas Maurer. I work as a cloud architect for the company called Itnetx here in Switzerland. We are focused on delivering Microsoft Cloud solutions based on System Center, Windows Server, Hyper-V, and Microsoft Azure to customers. My special focus is on the fabric topics like hypervisor, storage and networking, as well as a lot of automation. And I'm also a Microsoft MVP for Hyper-V, and probably you have already seen my blog or my Twitter account. So let's get started. In this section, I'm going to talk about the shift to cloud computing and what's going to change for IT departments and things how we deliver IT to our customers. Just a quick intro to that, and then we will focus on System Center Virtual Machine Manager, how you can manage your data center, your fabric resources, such as storage, compute, or networking. And at the end, we will also see how we can use these resources to provide them for customers and deploy services on those resources. So first of all, I think that slide, a lot of people have seen that slide before. This is Microsoft Cloud OS vision, where they talk about a hybrid cloud scenario where they have one consistent platform. Is this even in Microsoft Azure as the service provider or in your on-premise data center? We're all running the same technology, so you can easily move from one cloud to another cloud without having a lot of trouble. Now, you can also mix these resources if you need them to get the best out, make the best out of it. So, but how do you get there? Well, there is a concept called infrastructure optimization. It's a little bit older concept from Microsoft, where they do 4 categories of IT departments. So you have this basic category for where the IT department probably is just a cost center for some IT and doesn't bring any value to it. Then you have the standardized IT where you'll be more like an efficient cost center where you're not so expensive, but you're still a cost center and you don't deliver any high resources or business enabler to the company or to the business. Next step would be rationalized IT, which starts to become a business enabler because you can start to go to market and things like that are important. And if you want to do a hybrid cloud computing, you want to be in the dynamic category, where everything is fully automated, where you have the possibility to do SLAs, charge back or show back and things like that, where you also can dynamically allocate resources for a project and also dynamically move them as well. So, but how do you get there? First of all, if you want to try to move to the cloud, you have basically move from this basic category to a standardized category. And there is something, I think we all are clear about that, it's virtualization. So if you're not really virtualized yet, you probably should think about that because that's the only way you will be able to deploy and move resources and services quickly and flexible in a way. Then you have to shift from standard to rationalized, and that is where all the concept that I'll show you later comes into the game with resource pooling, capacity planning, and fabric management. You have to be really efficient in that. And if you want to go to a dynamic model where you also want to do a hybrid cloud solution, or probably some of the services running in your on-premise data center and some of your services are running in Microsoft Azure or on a local service provider, you have to go and also build service management. I'm not talking about service templates like here in VMM. I'm talking about IT service management, build IT processes and things like that. So, what is the cloud? Let me quickly talk a little bit about more about that, so we all understand the things I'm going to show you a little bit more later. First of all, there are 5 points which basically every cloud solution depends on. It doesn't matter if this is infrastructure as a service, software as a service, or platform as a service. I think those 5 points are really common. So the first of the things is pool your compute and storage and networking, so pool your fabric resources. You don't want to go out there and say, I want to have a new service, I want to deploy a new VM, I want to deploy, and I want to deploy it on that, actually exactly that host and probably that storage. That should be automated. We should have a pool of Hyper-V servers or other hypervisors as well, and a pool of storage resources. And this should be automated. If someone orders a VM with a gold classification, they should run probably on better hardware and better storage, faster storage, and then that decision should be made by the system. You also have to be scalable and flexible. So if the customer wants something, you have to be available to deliver it in very, very quickly. I have talked to customers that have told me if someone orders a simple virtual machine, they need probably like 4 weeks, and that's too long to deliver. That's something you have to change in your system, or which all cloud solutions, you don't wait 4 weeks for a server, right? Another thing you want to do is metering. You want to be able to do chargeback or showback, so you want to do resource metering on your solution. You also want to deploy a self-service portal, where you're going to let the users do what they want, or they can self-deploy services or virtual machines. And as you can think of, if you're using self-service and all the other things I told you about, everything should be automated, or most of the things should be automated. You don't want to have people setting up things for you because they just need too much time. So how can Virtual Machine Manager help us, and where is the position of Virtual Machine Manager in this Microsoft Cloud vision? So if you're going to deploy on-premise cloud with Microsoft technologies, or you're going to deploy or your service provider, which is going to deploy a public cloud, you will have to make use of the solution Virtual Machine Manager offers. So first of all, traffic management part. So what we want to do is manage storage like iSCSI, fiber channels, SMB or storage spaces, all that kind of storage from VMM. The same with the network parts. Even if it's just VLAN-based networks or if this is network virtualization networks, this is basically the thing you want to manage should be managed by VMM. Then we have compute. As you know, Virtual Machine Manager is hypervisor agnostic, so even if you use Hyper-V, you can use VMware, you can use Citrix, etc. And of course, Microsoft's own solution is a little bit better implemented as the others, but still you can manage your resources. And I really also like the way you can move resources from other hypervisors to Hyper-V as well. So what's next? So you can manage all those resources from a single console. What you want to do now is you want to pool those resources in something called clouds. We will show a little bit later what that means. And if you have those pools, you will create customers which can then use part of that resource pools or clouds to deploy their own services. That's basically the concept. What we want to do with Virtual Machine Manager. It's not just managing virtual machines or probably create some new services. It's all of that. So you want to make sure we can manage from the fabric until the service level. System Center Virtual Machine Manager, of course, you can see that it does also offer some other things like monitoring, deployment, things like that, which are integrated. We will have a look at that as well. So let's get started with storage management. As I said, first we're going to talk a little bit about the fabric, how we manage those, and then I will show you how you can pool them and resources. The storage is important. So you have different classification of storage. Probably have file storage and flow storage. There's different vendors. And I don't know, I talked like 2 years or 4 years ago already, we talked a little bit about there were different teams in companies. There's a storage team, there's a hypervisor team, a virtualization team, networking team, and things like that. And that makes it sometimes processes take longer as they should. So if I want to request a new LUN or something, I have to call the storage team and tell them I need a new LUN. This probably attached to that Hyper-V server and things like that. That can slow down processes pretty well. So VMM can manage different types of storage. So you can directly create new LUNs or SMB shares, or for example, directly from the VMware console. So what we can do, we can integrate via SNIS provider with the storage vendors, fiber channel, iSCSI, whatever. We can also manage NAS devices, which offers SMB3, and of course we can also manage the Microsoft solution with the scale-out file servers with storage spaces. That doesn't mean we can also, we not only have to use storage spaces, we can also use the sound behind that scale-out file server as well. That's all we can do. As you can see, here is a screenshot how we can integrate with different storage vendors, and that's not a complete list, but that shows you a little bit who is integrating here. You have like vendors like Hitachi, NetApp, HP, EMC, which can be integrated. Let me show you quickly how that looks like. We move to my demo environment here. For those who don't know, This is the virtual machine manager console. I already added some Hyper-V hosts to create some virtual machines. As you can see before we go to storage management, we have on the left side here, we have different tabs for VMs and services. We have a fabric part, we have a library, we have a job view, and settings. On the settings, for example, we can use like create new user roles and access roles like that. Job view shows me all the jobs I was running here, not only from my user, but I can also see other users as well. In the library, we will talk a little bit more about that. We store all our things like VHDs or templates and things like that. We will make use then in the service deployment. On the VM services view, we see all the VMs running, and we can see on which hosts they're running and can manage them. Now, let's have a quick look at the fabric part now. I talked about storage. As you can see, we have here like servers or compute, networking, and storage. And if you have a look at the storage part, I already added some providers here. I added an iSCSI storage via SMIS provider, and I also added a scale-out file server. So what I can do now, if I have a look here, I can see that that's the name of my storage here. I can go and create a new LUN directly from the VMM console and go, let's say, this is this, 05. I won't make a big LUN here. It'll take a little bit more space. But I can create a new logical unit. But at the end, this will provision a new LUN on the storage. Now, interesting is also if I go with our file servers as well. I already have here a file server with one share. If I want to create a new share, I can do that directly from this console. Let's say VM04, give them a classification, and give them a part on that file server. Now, normally I wouldn't do that on the C drive, but that's for a demo. So I can create that share, and as you can see, the share is created on that server, on that file server cluster. And what I can do now is I can switch to a Hyper-V server, for example. Looking at the properties of the Hyper-V server, you can see again the hardware. You can see the hardware of the Hyper-V server, and on the storage tab, you can go and then attach one of those file shares I have already created. So you can select one of those shares, attach them. And what's happening in the background now is the file share gets the right permissions for those Hyper-V servers. Sorry, also do that for another server here. Do that on the storage. Add this file share I've created. It's okay. And in the background, as I said, the permission will be set in that file. So this was the storage part. Now, as I said, there are already a lot of storage vendors integrating with that. A lot of storage providers already offer SMIS providers for storage solutions. Networking. Why is network management important, especially in a cloud environment? Since in a cloud environment we have VMs moving from each host to another, from one rack to another, from one data center to another, we want our data center to look like this, and probably not like this. Okay, so we really have to think about here how we do network management. I mean, it's more and more complex. If you have a lot of VMs, if you have a lot of networking stuff, it's not something which takes a lot goes away in the future. It will be more complex in the future as well. So we have to have the right solution in place. Now, what Systems Center Virtual Machine Manager in 2012 started was the concept of logical network sites, and IP address pools. This was in the year 2012, I think, was the release of that. Logical networks are basically the physical infrastructure. So you have this, for example, you say you have an exchange network for your exchange server, you have a network for your Citrix server farm and things like that. So you build these logical networks, and those logical networks include network sites. So if you have, for example, you have an exchange network, but you have two sites, site A and site B, and they have both different VLANs on both sides, so you can build that directly into in virtual machine manager. You will build those environments. Basically, it's nothing else like building your physical environment into VMM. So you just take it how it is and build it into VMM. And then you have this interesting part of IP pools, which allow you to create a pool of IP addresses, and VMM can then assign, during the deployment of virtual machines, can assign IP addresses to those virtual machines. The virtual machines then get an IP address, the fixed IP address, and the VM, if the VM is deleted, the IP address goes back into that pool and can be used for another virtual machine. That makes IP address management very, very easy. I still see a lot of companies doing it via Excel sheets and things like that. That's always a problem. Normally, I ask for an IP address, they go to their Excel sheets, they ping that IP address to look if there's really nothing going on, and they just don't have a consistent list of IP addresses. So why do you still manage IP addresses if VMM can do that for you? The next was in Virtual Machine Manager 2012, SP1 or R2, Microsoft added some new stuff into Virtual Machine Manager, depending on the networking part. You have still the logical networks with the physical environment, with the network sites, with the IP address pools, and things like that. That's not gone, nothing changed. But they added something called VM networks. VM networks are basically virtual networks which are run on top of the physical infrastructure. I will show you that in a minute. Then you have a new logical switch. The logical switch is basically nothing else than a Hyper-V virtual switch or a centralized Hyper-V virtual switch, which you can create in VMM and then deploy to several different Hyper-V hosts. And if you change something on virtual switch settings, this changes on all Hyper-V hosts as well. So basically, if you know the part from VMware, they call it a distributed switch. Basically, this is one of these familiar concepts. And then you have these port profiles. You have two types of port profiles which come with the logical switch. And you have this uplink port profile, which is basically a physical port profile. So you can configure the tuning configuration of the Hyper-V server, for example, in that port profile. And on the other side, you have the virtual port profile, which configures the virtual network adapter of the virtual machines. So, for example, QoS settings, security settings, or performance settings for the virtual machine itself. So the question remains, why did Microsoft add this feature called VM networks? Because if you're not using network virtualization, you have this one-to-one mapping with a logical network and a VM network. And the answer to that is network virtualization. So what is network virtualization basically doing? Network virtualization is nothing really big if you think about it. We're doing that with servers all the time. So we have a physical servers and we run virtual servers on top of that physical server. The same thing we are now doing with physical network. We have this physical network, or even VLANs, or physical networks. And on that VLANs or physical network, we create multiple virtual networks. That's the whole thing. We can talk a little bit now more about that, but I think there was another webinar with Daniel Flynn where he talked a lot about network virtualization. So in the concept, it looks like this. This was VMM in 2012. We had these logical networks that I talked about, and we attached them to virtual machines. Now, in SP1 or in R2, that changed. We have now this one-to-one mapping. We have a logical network, and we have a VM network. It doesn't, for somebody who uses only VLAN, this doesn't make a lot of sense right now. But if you think about network virtualization, where you have like one VLAN and you run multiple virtualized networks on that VLAN, that can start to make sense. We also, I already told you about that, we also have this logical switch where we can have configurations and this port profiles where we can attach network policies, bandwidth control, QS, DHCP guard, Itnetx task and all those performance and security features which we can use with that. Microsoft also integrated and had the network virtualization gateway. So we could do very simple to create those virtualized networks, but they were just isolated to each other, and they couldn't go to the physical network. So you have to use a gateway to get out of that virtualized network. And Microsoft announced with Windows Server 2012 R2 that they can integrate that in Windows Server. So you can also manage those Hyper-V network virtualization gateway directly from VMM. And also, normally, if I do that presentation like that, I ask people now on this slide who uses a professional IPAM management, and it doesn't have to be Excel. So always the answer is, okay, we don't have one. Probably one or two persons in the audience probably have a solution for that. So Microsoft offered with Windows Server 2012 this feature called IPAM management, the IPAM. And in Windows Server 2012, we could use group policies and things like that to get Active Directory configurations, DNS, and DHCP information directly into that IPAM management solution. So you've got a lot of information about IP addresses in the system. Now, still, if you're a service provider or if you're a big company, your networks are isolated, and IPAM management server cannot connect to every server. But since we do a lot of virtualization, most of our servers are virtualized. And VMM, with those IP address pools and things like that, knows about the IP addresses of those servers. So what they've integrated in Windows Server 2012 R2 is the possibility to attach the IP address management server to VMM, and you get a lot of IPs. Basically, all the virtual machines you already have already in your system. Let's see a little bit about networking, which is my demo environment here. If I go back here in the Fabric tab, I can see here the networking part with my logical network I talked about. This is basically just the network I have in my system here. With the different VLANs, with the different subnets, all the things the networking guy gave to me, I added here to that thing. I also have this network virtualization network called the provider address space. So this is the physical network where all the virtual networks live on. If you have a look now, when we use Virtual Machine Manager, creating virtual networks becomes very easy. What I did is I set it up, this network here, make this available to my Hyper-V host, and I said allow network virtualization on that network. That's all I did. I created an IP address pool, so VMM will automatically assign IP addresses to the Hyper-V host. And now I or customers can create new virtual networks. For example, so here a new VM network. Customer 06, for example. I can say yes, use Hyper-V network virtualization. And if you have seen, I create that new network on the cloud network provider space. Create that.
We have a little question about Virtual Machine Manager.
Yeah.
Can you manage your services in Azure as well from your on-premises Virtual Machine Manager?
Actually, you can't. Virtual Machine Manager right now only manages your on-premise systems. But when we talk about service, self-service, a little bit later, you will see that there's another solution called App Controller, which allows you to manage your on-premise environment as well as your Microsoft Azure environment from a single console. I hope this does answer the question. So what I do here is now I create a new network for that customer. A customer can have multiple networks. It can subnet the name. I don't really care which subnet it is. because network virtualization can have the same subnet multiple times. If I would use a network virtualization gateway, I could here connect the gateway, I say finish, and now I can use that virtual network here and connect that to virtual machines. That's simple. So very, very easy to do network virtualization with virtual machine manager. The other thing I want to show you is this new tab here on the fabric. You have network services. And what I did, as you can see, I can add network services here, such as network virtualization gateways, virtual switch extensions, top-of-the-rack switches, or IP address management like I did already. Here, I have attached my IP address management server. You look at here, it's just Microsoft credentials, the connection string to my IP address management server. So what's happened now? All the IP addresses VMM knows about here. You can see that near all of those networks and all of the virtual networks as well fit into my IP address management server. So if I have a look at my IP address management server, for those who haven't seen that before, this is the server manager of Windows Server 2012 R2. If you install IP address management, you get this IP address management tab, and you connect that to your system. You connect that to your DHCP servers, you connect that to your AD server, and things like that. So now we have this virtualized IP address space. And if I click here, it takes a moment. We will see all those networks I have created inside Virtual Machine Manager. And I can see how many VMs are using those IP addresses from that network. I would also get alerts if the subnet doesn't have enough IP addresses and things like that. Get all the information here right now directly from the VMM server. So let's switch back to the demo. So what about networking? Now, if you want to use services or you want fabric, if you have a lot of servers, not like I do in my environment, but still, because you manage a lot of servers, you get some problems, right? Sometimes it feels like you're blind and you can't see what's going on in the private cloud because there are so many things you have to check, best practices on virtual machines and things like that, or you don't see that the storage is really full, or you can't see that which virtual machine uses a lot of CPU, things like that. So Savision here has done an add-in for virtual machine manager. Add-ins are something which allows companies like Savision to make very useful additions to the virtual machine manager. And Cloud Advisor is basically a tuning and optimization feature which gives you a recommendation based on VMM resources. And guess what? This is free, so you can download that directly from the Savision website. And I will show you that quickly. Because this is really cool. I don't know, I mean it's free and you can just use it and it helps you a lot. So if you go here, and if you have a look at my environment, I can see here all my virtual machines running on my system. But if I want to check if I use everywhere dynamic memory, for example, I could use PowerShell or things like that, but that always takes a lot of time. And you have this tuning stick here. If you go and click on that tuning stick button, normally, this logs all your information, and as you can see, there are some baselines attached to that system. And you can see, for example, here is a red one. You can see that my VM called Act3 has a checkpoint present. Now, okay, that's okay. Thanks for that information. But if you click on that, you get a description with a little bit more information, and you get also some recommendations on that as well. So you can see why is this a bad thing or what can happen if I use this. There are several other things you can really make use of. For example, I can see all the virtual machines where their dynamic memory is not enabled and things like that. It really helps you to get a little bit of an overview of the environment and fix some small or bigger issues as well. So that was it for the fabric management part. We're now switching to services. Cloud services and VM templates. First of all, let me clarify what services are. Well, If a customer normally deploys a virtual machine, he doesn't want to deploy a virtual machine. He wants to deploy a service running on that virtual machine. And a service like a web shop, for example, can be like multiple virtual machines, like a database tier, web tier, and application tier. And I want to deploy that in one single go, and that's something I want to show you right now. If you switch to the demo environment. First of all, we now have all those resources managed in our environment. We have the storage, we have the Hyper-V servers, and all that kind of thing. Now we want to pool them, like I said before. So what we can do, we can create a virtual machine manager cloud for our customers. So our customers can use specific resources to deploy new virtual machines. I then say which Hyper-V host or which host group should be used. I will give them cluster resource. I can say which logical networks can they use if they deploy virtual machines to that cloud. In that case, I would use this provider space cloud that network virtualization runs on. They don't have access to the management cloud. I could add load balancers, things like that. I could add port profiles. We talked about that. And as you can see, I can now add this storage, which I attached to my Hyper-V service earlier. I can now add that for deployment, so the customers can now use that called storage as well. Can then do some things, and I can now limit the resources they can use. So if I want to say customers, all the customers I have, I have to share that resource with my own systems as well. So I will limit them. Customers can only use 100 or 100 virtual machines, and then I have to do something else. Or I can limit that on virtual CPUs, memory as well. After that, I create that cloud. I have created my resource pool, my resource pool, my cloud, that I now can deploy virtual machines in that. Now, the next step would be creating a new customer. This would be customer red, for example. And as you can see, I can not only create customers, I can also create some other user roles, like fabric administrators. So for example, I can add a fabric administrator for just another site, so he can manage all Hyper-V servers in Barcelona, for example, and I have access to all the servers in Switzerland. That would be something I could do. If only administrator is clear, or I have this tenant administrator, that would be a new customer. You can then add, for example, Active Directory groups to that. So if I have a group for all that users, put that in there. And I can now assign them one of those clouds I've created. So I take the resources I have pooled, and now I can give it to them and offer them the resources. So what I will do here, it can also have multiple clouds, of course. I will add those tenant resources here. Well then, as you can see, I've limited the tenant resources to 80 virtual machines. So I will say this customer here, the customer red, everyone there can only use 20 virtual machines out of 80, for example. Or they can only use a gigabyte or a terabyte of storage, depending on that. So what I can also do is I can add some of the virtual networks, but I can also give them rights to create virtual networks by themselves. So I can add them, or they can add them later on. I can add resources. We will talk about a little bit later about templates and things like that. And here, that could be interesting. Here I can give them different actions which they are allowed to do. For example, they can start, stop, or shut down a VM. They can also delete VMs because they're their own VMs. I can give them access to create virtual networks. I can also say, yeah, you can deploy new virtual machines and things like that. So you can really do a pretty good setting here what you can achieve. And then also do some quotas and things like that. And then I've created a new customer, basically, which now can use this cloud resources. Okay. So the next step is now I have pooled I manage my fabric, I pooled those resources in cloud, I created a customer. Now the customer wants to play service. The first thing we have is called VM templates. VM templates are nothing really special, but they can make your life a little easier. VM templates are basically just how does a VM look like the virtual hardware of that VM. Like how is the OS configuration? Like, is this a domain joint server or is it not? And things like that. All that things can pretty simple things. If you go a little bit more, and I talked about services before, we have those service solutions. If you take this web shop example, for example, you have seen the picture on the slide before. This web shop exists of 3 different tiers. A web tier with IIS servers, an application tier with the application, and the SQL tier where all the databases run on. So these are not just simple virtual, it's not a single virtual machine. This is a tier with several instances. As you can see here, I have an instance count of 2 by default, so if I deploy that service, this will automatically deploy 2 web servers. I can then have a minimum instance count of 1, so I can also remove 1 web server later on. And I also can scale up that service if I need to. So for example, if I launch a new product and I know people want to buy that, I can scale out my web tier, for example. So it's behind a load balancer. You can have multiple web servers, and it's a simple one-time click. You say scale out, and it will deploy a new virtual machine with the same configuration behind that load balancer. Okay, that's one thing. Now, another thing I want to talk about is virtual applications. So I'm not sure if you have heard about AppV, which is basically AppV. We use that a lot in the client environment. So we deploy that, we take that application, we do a sequence of that application, and then we can deploy those virtual applications to the client. So the same thing we can now do with server application as well. As you can see here, I can switch from the VM view to a service view. That's great. So if I have created services, for example, I can see here multiple servers running on. I can then click it open, and I see here the tier. That's the tier. So I have only a single tier in that service because it's a very, very simple service. And this, on the tier, we have just a single VM running with a virtualized application. So if I have a quick look at this virtual machine here, I can see that's a simple server running FileZilla in that version 39. So that's it. It doesn't look really special right now. It just looks like a deployed server with an app on it. So if I go back, have a look at this service here. It's a single tier. If I click on that, you can see it's a single instance, so a single VM. The only special thing on that is that I've also added an application here. I created this package with the AppV sequencer. I haven't time to show you that, but it's very simple. You record all the information steps with that, and then you have this package that you can add. So I have this FileZilla package 39 attached to that. I deployed that service, and as you can see, I have a VM running with that application. Now, there was an update, and there is now release 44. So what I did is I did an update of that service, and I have just you can see it's the same service template, but it's a new release number. So what I did, happens all of them. What I did is I only changed the application here. I went here and replaced that application with a new version 44 and saved that as a new release. So what I can do now, I can go here. So I can update that service. You can see that template is this service is now running 39. So let's see if we can update that. Set template. You can change the template to a new release. If there is something I have to configure for that with software, there would be input field right here. And then I can choose the update method. I can also choose that I want to deploy the whole service new, so it will also create a new virtual machine and everything like that. But I say only do upgrade the changes, do an in-place upgrade. Now we'll get a warning, which basically says you have only a single service deployed on that instance. So if you update that, the service will not be available for a couple of seconds. Okay, I can ignore that and say let's do the upgrade now. And what's happening now, we can see that. I hope it's fast enough. You can see the application gets removed, that virtual application gets removed, and VMM will now attach the new version, the new release of that thing. So you can see the status is completed, and now open that application. You can see I'm now running the new version of Azure server. Of course, you can do that with other applications, not really with Exchange or anything big like Exchange SharePoint, but you can do that with a lot of small applications. Now, if you think about that, for one server, this probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but if you run multiple servers with the same applications, this can help you easily upgrade. Now the great thing about that is, since you have all the changes are documented, you can go back. So if something is not working with this new release, I can go back to release 39. You can see again an in-place upgrade. I will get the warning again, the next finish, and I can simply go back and add that thing here. So this is not just working with, there could be also some changes behind it. Probably release 44 does have like 2 servers, for example. In that case, a release update would create another VM as well. If we go back here and check that, we now run again all working. Okay. That was service deployment. Now, let me jump back to my demo. Services, server FD. Why should we use services? Well, there's some reasons here. You have this, you can see all the servers which are for one service in a single unit. So if you see like you have 3 IIS servers, or you have like 20 IIS servers, you can see which IIS server is running for which server. You can also make use of server FD as well, and there are also a lot of other configuration steps. You can really configure all the things you would love to have in a virtual machine or something. You can do that with service template. Microsoft also releases service templates for VMM. For example, if you want to do a SharePoint farm, or if you want to do SQL Server installation, Microsoft also offers service templates you can download via web platform installer, and you can import that into the virtual machine manager, and then you can deploy it. So you have an automated deployment of a SharePoint server in a couple of minutes. You can deploy that and you'll find it's good. Also, the Network Virtualization Gateway is also a service template, so if you want to use that, you can download that template, you can import it into VMM, you can deploy the Network Virtualization Gateway very, very easy. Okay, so that's all we talked about. You have still something left, and that's self-service. There was a question before, how do I manage, can I manage Windows Azure or Microsoft Azure from my VMM? Unfortunately, you can't. VMM is just a single instance for your on-premise cloud. So, but there's another solution called App Controller. And App Controller replaced the self-service portal for VMM in, I think it was in the release of System Center 2012. And what App Controller is not just a single new portal written in Silverlight. It also can do other things like, as I said, it can manage public cloud. You can connect Windows Azure with your Azure subscription to VMM. You can have, to App Controller, sorry. And you can connect multiple virtual machine managers And you can also connect hosting companies, local service providers, if they offer that. And you can see all your VMs and services you use on all the different clouds in a single console, which is pretty great. That's one of the solutions we have right now. There's this other one called Windows Azure Pack. I'm sure you have seen that everywhere right now. There's a lot of blog posts, a lot of ads coming from that. Windows Azure Pack is basically a self-service portal which you can install, which brings which not only looks like Windows Azure, it also brings the Windows Azure experience or enterprise Windows Azure offering to your data center. So if you want to build a service provider, you can use that. It's not only the portal, it's also a framework behind it, so you can create customers and things like that. So I still have a couple of minutes. I will show you that quickly. What does that mean? Up here, basically there are two portals. There is an admin portal and a customer portal. This here is the admin portal. And as you can see here, I can do different things. Like I can add VM clouds, I can add website clouds for website hosting, I can add SQL servers for SQL hosting, and I can do a bunch of other stuff as well. What I did is I added my VMM server, and as you can see, I can see here the clouds which I did here. I created in VMM before. And what I then can do is create a plan. A plan is nothing else than an offering. And if you check out that offering, this offering here created.
So just a clarification.
Yeah.
This Windows Azure Pack can manage your on-premise virtual machine manager, not just the cloud. Is that correct?
Yeah. It's connected. It's connected to. It's not connected to Windows Azure right now, but to Microsoft Azure. It's only connected to the on-premise VMM server. So it's basically for IT departments which will offer self-service for their on-premise solution, or for service providers which will create their own public cloud to offer that to their external customers. So this is here the offering. I connected my offering to that VMM server. I said they can use the resources in the tenant cloud. And then I also said that the offering is based on 10 virtual machines and things like that. So if someone buys that offering, that creates a tenant user inside VMM. If you go back quickly, you can see on the settings, I've created a user in Windows Azure Pack which has access to those clouds. And if I go to the quote scope here, he has access to the tenant, and the quotas are set like I did in Windows Azure Pack. That's all automatically created from Windows Azure Pack itself. So I jump back in Windows Azure Pack. I created that offering, attached it to a user, and now the user can log in on his own self-service portal. And that's the experience the customer or the end user gets. When he logs in, a little bit slow, normally it's so fast, so don't worry. Gets the same experience. As you can see, it looks basically like Windows Azure or Microsoft Azure, but it's not. It's because we have a lot less options. You only have right now options for those offering I attached. So what the customer can do, he can add plans or he can sign up for plans. One of the plans I already created, I attached him a plan already. So he got this subscription here, the VM Cloud subscription. And what he can do now is he can go and create, for example, virtual machines. And go here, like say from gallery. I also made this template here available. You can choose the template, could enter a name, password, things like that, and you can deploy that virtual machine. This takes a while because I'm not going to do it. But what I'm going to do is I create a new virtual network. I've shown you how you can do that in in VMM, but the customer can also do that by themselves if they're right to do that. So what they can do is like create a new virtual network, new name, customer, and then enter, configure that network, and enter, for example, DNS server, things like that. Could also use the network virtualization gateway. I want to, and then I can create that subnet. That's the same thing I did before in virtual machine networking, networking part. I will go for the same subnet, but this would also work with another subnet as well. Then I can click OK. What's now happening, we have this job here, which goes and creates that virtual network directly into VMM. If we go back to VMM now, and we go to that virtualized VMM services part, we go to VM networks, you can see now we have this new virtual network called customer Savision with automatically this network configured like that. So that's the self-serving part, that's the offering we're looking at, that's one of the solutions we have here. Okay, so if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer it. Otherwise, I will get the word back to Stephen.
Okay, well, thank you very, very much, Thomas. It was a very informative presentation. Just while we wait for any questions to come in, I just want to remind people that we did record this webinar, so if you want to watch it again or you want to pass it on to colleagues or friends, it will eventually be made available on the Savision website. Also, feel free to visit the Savision website. We do have our Cloud Advisor solution that Thomas demoed for you. It's completely free, no strings attached. Download it, put it into Virtual Machine Manager, and it will identify any misconfigurations, any hosts or clusters that are on verge of running out of memory, and really keep things running at optimum level. Of course, if you'd like to pay us some money, we also have Cloud Reporter, which is our high-level reporting product for Hyper-V, and Live Maps, which turns System Center Operations Manager into Business Service Management. We will get you a link to the video. We'll send an email out as soon as it's posted, so you'll be able to click through right from that. So if there are no other questions, and of course we'll stay around for a few minutes after the webinar if people are still putting thoughts together. But if there are no other questions, I'd like to thank you very, very much, Thomas. Question coming in.
There's one question about, is this different from App Controller? Well, I guess we're talking about Windows Azure Pack. Yes, there is. So App Controller is the thing where you can manage all your solutions from a single console. So it doesn't matter where your environment is running. If there is some resources on premise, some resources on Microsoft Azure, or in host or in local service provider. You will get this experience, this single console where you can see all your virtual machines. With Windows Azure Pack, basically you can only create usage right now for on-premise resources. So if you're using that inside your company, you can only show them or can only deploy virtual machines on-premise.
So is there any chargeback option with any of these applications?
There is, basically in Windows Azure Pack, there comes a solution called service reporting, where you can get that information. Then you also have some integration with third-party vendors which do solutions on that.
And how granular can I get the chargeback to? Is it just per virtual machine, or I can get down to CPU usage and network usage and that sort of thing?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you can get, actually, I can show you quickly. I mean, if we could go back to my slide here, version here. No, I can't show it right now, probably. I don't have virtual machine running, that's the problem. But basically, you would see it like in Windows Azure. You can see how much resources are going to the virtual switch, how much traffic you use, how much CPU you use, how much storage you use over some time. So it's not just how many virtual machines you have, it's also the usage-based thing, usage-based approach here. Yeah.
And we saw you create some templates for virtual machines and some templates for services and automatically deploy them with Virtual Machine Manager. Can Virtual Machine Manager also deploy Hyper-V servers for us?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's something I didn't have time to talk about. But we have this option called bare metal deployment, where you can configure physical Hyper-V servers and also, since there are two releases, physical file servers or scale-out file servers. You can deploy that. Basically, there's a Windows deployment service behind that, so a WEX server and a DHCP boot, a Pixie boot to deploy that. What happens then is it copies the VHD to that physical box and does a boot from VHD. So that's how it happens, how it works.
Okay, and then Azure, the Azure Windows Azure Pack, does it have an API so we can control it from external applications, or do I just have to go through the web interface?
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, I didn't really talk about the architecture of Windows Azure Pack. So Windows Azure Pack are basically some different parts. What I showed you were the parts with the web interface, but you also have parts, underlying parts, API parts. So you can use, you don't have to even to use the portal or the design of the portal. You can use just the API and build your own portal on that API layer if you want to.
Okay, and Windows Azure Pack itself, does it run on top of Virtual Machine Manager, or does it talk directly to the hypervisors?
Well, in Windows Azure Pack basically does the following thing. If you configure with VMM, with Virtual Machine Cloud, it talks to SPF, which is Service Provider Foundation. That's another API layer, which is between VMM and Windows Azure Pack. So Windows Azure Pack talks to SPF, Service Provider Foundation. Service Provider Foundation talks then to VMM. You can only use it with VMM.
Okay. And when we get back to the chargeback discussion, am I able to specify my own costs for things like virtual machines or cost of storage space? Is that built into the chargeback options, or do I need a third-party product to do that sort of thing?
Yeah, no, you can do that. Basically, what you can configure, I just showed you a quick part of how the plan is configured. So you could tell like a customer, you can buy that plan for $100. And if you want to have more storage, you could buy an add-on for that plan, which adds like 500 gigabytes of storage to that plan, which costs another $20, for example. That's the thing you could do.
If I want to generate invoices and bills and that sort of thing, can I get that natively with System Center?
No, not really. You have to use third-party extensions for that. And there are some, it depends on what you want to do. There are some things you could probably do in Service Manager, but not in that kind of scenario where you're using a Azure Pack. So to answer that, I would definitely see third-party solutions for that right now.
One other question, can we measure the amount of subscribed storage space? I guess that's different than the amount that they're actually using.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can see how much storage space is used by the customer. You can do an average usage or whatever you want to do, or how you want to charge it. Yeah, you can do that. Yeah.
And I guess we could get fancy and charge more for the stuff that they're using and a little less for the stuff they have reserved but aren't using, because we could secretly switch that out to someone else. So I think we'll just wait a couple of seconds or so, but I think that's all the questions. But some very, very good questions. And again, I wanted to thank Thomas for sharing all his knowledge about things Virtual Machine Manager with us. And again,
thank you, team, and thank you for Savision for doing that.
Oh, well, we're happy to do so. And if anyone's going to be in Houston next week for TechEd, we invite you to join us at the Savision booth. We're going to have some contests, give away a few Rubik's Cubes, and generally preview all of our own products. And we invite any MVPs to drop by as well. We have some special things for them too. once again, I want to thank everyone for attending. We hope that you learned a lot from this presentation, and we will be getting an email out to you with a link to the recording as soon as possible. So thank you very much.
Thank you.